All right. Looks like we're going live. Hello, I'm Perry. Uh, just here a little earlier, trying to set up here. I've got a whole new system here. Take off those glasses. I've got a new system, so we'll see. Work on the lighting. Got lots of questions that people asked. Hopefully, you can hear me okay. Uh, hello, hello. Let's see what we got here. Check, check. It's just the early check here. Um, yeah, got lots of questions, and which I'll start in about 10 minutes. Hopefully, this is working. I have no idea if it's working. Hopefully it's recording. Um, I think there's a live chat. You can probably say something. So if you're online, feel free to type something in the live chat. Um, we'll see. But if you're on the website, you can ask the questions below. Let's see if this is working. Uh, yeah, there's one person on, so maybe that's me. I don't know. Boy. Well, hopefully I haven't crashed my system. See what the webinar's doing. Oh, there. I see it. Hey, I'm talking to myself. I see it. Hey. Okay. So that seems to be working. Um, if you had a question, feel free to post it below. At the moment, um, okay. Still waiting on anyone joining. So we'll see. Yeah, usually a few more people are online at this point. Ah, well, some people have found the chat, so there we go. Um, we've got preservative for hair. I'm not sure what you mean there. Uh, it says what's the preservative for hair? For hair products, depends on what your product is. So, what kind of formula are you asking about? And Kit says, how do you make a stable cosmetic formulation? Uh, the, the question is a little bit vague. So, I mean, you you have a water phase, you have an oil phase, you have an emulsifier, and you pick the right emulsifier for the right oil phase, and you mix it with the right level of shear, and then you made your stable cosmetic emulsion. But of course, it's more complicated. You have to have you need a specific question. There's general questions are much more difficult to answer or to give a useful answer to. I can answer any question, but it's a matter of finding a useful answer. So um, Shabazz wants to ask about stearic acid pearlization. How do you get it to immediately pearl? A lot of that is going to depend on your concentration, but stearic acid will pearl in some cases. It won't pearl in other cases. So, but the way that you do it is, better than a pearlizing agent than stearic acid is glycerol, EGMS, ethylene glycol monostearate. That's the better one. You use that at about 1%, and you heat it up. You get it into solution, and upon cool down, it'll kick out and create a pearly effect. But typically, those types of pearls will take overnight to pearlize properly. So that's how you do that. I'm still working on setting stuff up here, so I'm going to get officially started in 9 minutes from now. 9 minutes, 9 minutes. So I just want to make sure everything's working. We've got a ton of questions that were sent in, over 100 questions. I don't think I'll get to them all today, but I will get to as many as I can. And if you have more questions, feel free to put in there. Um, Annika suggests making a WhatsApp group. Okay, I don't know how to do that. I'm a formulated chemist. I am not a technology wizard. Although I know what those things are. I've not looked into doing that. My focus really has been on to get answers to these questions that you have. And so at the moment, that's what we're going to focus on. But for the next time, I certainly could use advice on setting this up. Uh, I I had to cap it at 500 people for this webinar. We certainly had a bunch more who wanted to join, but well, that next time. So Holly says, how have tariffs affected the industry lately? It's a good question. People are always going to need to buy beauty products. So from the consumer standpoint, I don't think tariffs have much affected the cosmetic industry. Prices haven't gone up significantly, or at least in a way consumers can notice. But as far as the chemical manufacturers are going, and especially like the colorant companies, the tariffs are really, really hurting those manufacturers, and eventually it's going to trickle down to consumers. But I think right at the moment, it's something that isn't having a big impact, at least on the consumer level. On the company level, it's they're essentially having to make less profits, be less profitable, and ultimately those tariff costs are going to be passed on to consumers. So. That's my thoughts on it. So we'll see. Uh, there's a whole live web chat on the side here that I didn't even know existed. We'll keep putting in your comments there, and if I don't get to them, I will get to them eventually. But so this is the way this will work. In 5 minutes, I'm going to start going through the questions that were sent in. And just answering. There were a ton of different kinds in there. But first, before we get started, I'm going to get a drink of water. My voice is on. I'm going to be talking for an hour and a half. It'll be good to have my voice ready. Incidentally, I always like to know where people are from. So if you are online, just let me know where you're from. I'm located in Chicago, in the United States. And for me, it's coming up on 10 a.m. Where are you from? I'm going to get a drink of water right now. All right. Hello, you are on French from Morocco, living in California. Hello, California. Turley. Um, let's see. Ann Kits asks, what is chelating agent? I don't know. Maybe you're asking chelating agent. I think we have a question in there from that, so we'll get to that. What is recommended uses for Nylon 12 in pressed eyeshadow? I'm not sure. Are you asking what's the level? The reason you use a Nylon 12 in a pressed eyeshadow is to make it smoother to apply. Nylon are like little ball bearings, which helps it smoothly apply. So I'm not sure if you're asking what the level you use in, but there's that. George from Peru. Hello, George. Philadelphia. We got someone from Philadelphia. Hello. Urban Essence says, where can I purchase your book? Unfortunately, the Beginning Cosmetic Chemistry book is out of print. And actually, if you join the Society of Cosmetic Chemists, you can get a free copy of the digital version through them. But we don't have print versions, so you can find it on Amazon or that kind of thing. But I'm working on a new book. Maybe it'll come out next year, which will be sort of a revised version of beginning cosmetic chemistry. So look for that. But at the moment, you can find it online. I only have one copy myself now, so I've actually sold all the ones that I had. Gigi's living in Orlando from Chicago. Oh, hello. Okay, we are going to get started in 3 minutes answering the questions. Hopefully it's working. Let me see if my webinar software is working. You never know. Oh, 12 people are online, so it looks like it's working. Hello to the people on the webinar software online. I was talking to the YouTube people, so we're all over the place. Thankfully, my system is not crashing, so that's good. Yay! If you have a question and you're on the webinar website, you can just post it below. Let's see if we have any questions coming in. No questions at the moment. But if you have any questions, feel free. You post it below there. Let me get back to here. Aziz from Bangladesh. Hello, welcome. We've got we've got people from all over the world. Bangladesh. I wonder what time it is there. It's morning here, so maybe it's 10 o'clock at night there. I don't know. So, hello, welcome. Thanks for coming on board. Gonna get started in 2 minutes officially. I think I'm almost all set up here. Just making sure the website doesn't crash. We've got that going on. Got that. Yay. Okay. So 1 minute to countdown. We've got Shabazz from Pakistan. Wow. Well, welcome. So good to have people from all over the world online. And we're just going to be answering questions that you have about cosmetic formulating. I've been formulating for a long time. I've been studying the subject for even longer. And, I have a perspective on a lot of different things, a lot of different advice. One of the most important things that you do when asking a question, though, is to make it as specific as you can. Asking a general question like, how do you make an emulsion? I can't really give you terribly helpful advice because it's a very complicated question. A question like, what level of this ingredient should I add? Again, I can give you some guidelines and recommendations. For example, what should be the percent of dimethicone and polyquaternium 7 in a 2-in-1 shampoo? Now, there's a question I can answer. Of course, all of my answers are couched in, well, it depends. But as far as that goes, polyquaternium 10, polyquat PQ7, typically you would use 0.5% in a formula, and dimethicone you would use up to 1% in a formula for a 2-in-1 shampoo. Now, every time I say those are just suggested levels, it's going to depend on a lot of factors of your formula, but that's the place to start. So you add those levels, and then you make a prototype, test it, and if it's not conditioning enough, you might add more of the PQ7, or if it leaves your hair too flat, you might take out some of the dimethicone, but those are places that you can start. Speaking of starting, I see that it's the top of the hour, and so we are going to officially kick off this cosmetic chemistry webinar. Hello, I am Perry Romanowski. I'm from Chemist Corner. I am a cosmetic formulator, and you've sent in a lot of questions. The last time we did a webinar was in June. We had a lot of people there. Unfortunately, it crashed our system. You can still see a replay of that webinar, but this new one, we've made some changes on our system, and hopefully that will fix things. So right at the moment, we've got almost 40 people online, in addition to the people that are on YouTube Live. So we've got a lot. We had over 500 people sign up for this. I had to cap it at 500. There are a lot more people who wanted to get on, but you guys made the cut and you're on, and you sent in a lot of questions. So I'm going to start the webinar with the questions that were sent in previously. When I sent out the email about this webinar, I said, hey, send in your questions. But if you have questions now while I'm talking or something occurs to you, and you're on the website, you can post your questions below and put in your email address, and I will answer as many as I can during the call or after. And on the other side, if you are on the live chat on YouTube, feel free to post your questions in there. I can see the live chat. I will try to respond to what I notice, but it's kind of complicated to do these things. I enjoy doing these questions and answer sessions. I try to get to as many questions as I possibly can, but it does become a little bit complicated to get to everything. I don't want these to go on for 3 hours. So with all that said, let's get started. All right. I'm going to generally summarize some of the questions. I might read them exactly or I'll summarize them, but these were the ones that came in. I will just give first names about questions. So the first one that I got was, how do you formulate an excellent product like the Elite Players, for example, SkinCeuticals, without exhausting yourself financially? And this comes from Mana Andi. Anyway, this is a great question. The first step in formulating an excellent product is to figure out the characteristics of what makes that product excellent. And to do this, you always need a benchmark. And actually, if you mention something like SkinCeuticals or you talk about an elite player, that is what I'm talking about as a benchmark. So it's a benchmark is a product that's already on the market that you think has excellent qualities. Now, the next step after you've picked your benchmark is to figure out some ways to quantify what makes that product so excellent. You've got to take measurements, viscosity, pH. You can figure out the percent water. You want to look at the aesthetic characteristics, write down some notes about the appearance, the color, the fragrance, the spreadability, the texture, and anything else that you can notice about this product and the formula. The better you can quantify the characteristics that you want to emulate, the easier it will be for you to formulate these things. Now, if you can measure something, then you can attempt to recreate that thing, match them, or even hopefully make them better. Now, after you've got your target characteristics, then you're going to look at the ingredient list and you're going to guess at a starting formula. Now, for me, I know the ingredients and I can have a pretty good guess at what formulas are. But if you're completely new to formulating, you're like, I don't know what to. We have a whole wide range. You've got to find yourself a starting formula, and in our forum we have a list of where you can find all of these starting formulas. And so once you have that guess of a starting formula, now you can get some more information from the benchmarks. One of the things you can do is you can figure out, if it's a water-based formula, you can figure out the actual water percentage that's in there. Essentially, what you do is you take a sample of a known weight. Say you take 10 grams of a sample or 50 grams of a sample. You put it in an oven, you weigh it, and then you put it in an oven and with the cap off, and you let the water all evaporate. And over time, the mass of that will go down. And when the mass sort of doesn't go down anymore, then you can figure out that's probably the percentage. The percent lost there is probably the percentage of water that's in that formula. Now, this is just a guess, but it's a really good guide to getting you to a point where you can create a starting formula. Now, after you've got something like that, you can actually also look at the formula, see if they have a patent on the formula. And if they do have a patent, you can get a good starting formula from that patent. You can't, now if you're going to sell the product, you can't just copy their patent and then sell that product. You've got to make some modifications. But as a starting formula, that's a great place to start. Now, after that, it comes down to making prototypes, testing those prototypes, and then figuring out what you need to improve. Then once you figure out what you need to improve, then make more prototypes and continue that iterative process until you get a thing that you think is a pretty good copy of most any formula out there. Now, how long does it take to do this? How many iterations? Well, it really depends on how close you want to get or how lucky you get on your first try. But you should be able to, within a dozen or so iterations, get something that's pretty close to copying something that's on the market or creating an excellent formula. Of course, the exact number of prototypes that it's going to take you is going to depend on how much experience that you have, the raw materials and the product you're making. But that's the approach that I would take to going through and figuring out how to make an excellent product like that. All right, thanks for that question. I should say we had sent in, 120 questions were sent in just in the last week. 120 questions. I'm going to get through as many as I can, but a lot of the questions were essentially of the line, "Hey, I want a formula for this. Hey, I want a formula for that." I'm not going to answer questions about a specific formula and where you can get it. I will give you a blanket answer, and it's this. You can find free formulas by going to our forum, and there is a discussion there called Where to Find Free Formulas, and it lists a whole bunch of sources where you can find free starting formulas. So if you want a natural clay shampoo formula, or you want to learn how to how to make a foundation or the ingredients that go into a lipstick, go to this source and find these free starting formulas. Now, for the people that are on the YouTube live streaming, I'm going to post the link to that, and that has all of the formulas there. So all of the questions where someone said, can you give me a formula for this? You can find a formula there. Okay, now that takes out about a dozen questions right there. So look at that. All right, on to the next question. Incidentally, thank you. Welcome here to the Chemist Corner Formulation question and answer session. I'm answering your questions. I'm Perry Romanowski. And if you're looking for formulation help and learning how to formulate the entire process, we still have our practical cosmetic formulating course. There should be a link below me to click on, and you can get our webinar special to join the course. Okay, here's a question from Kirill, who says, how do you change the color of a hairspray formulation to make it unwashable with water? This is kind of difficult to do, but typically to make, and I think you want to make a temporary hair color, and you put them right into the hairspray's formulation. Usually it's an alcoholic formulation. Spray it out. Now, those colors are not going to be unwashable. If you want a color that's unwashable, a permanent color, you're not going to be able to deliver that from a hairspray. You need to essentially go to a hair coloring process. You break down the melanin, you add a colorant, you polymerize it, it gets in there. But if you just want to deliver a color from a hairspray, using direct dyes is the way that is done. Okay, Ropa says, should I use water and oil as well as oil and water emollients in a conditioner? If so, could you suggest the ones that would lead to the best results? So in general, an emulsion formula should be either water in oil or oil in water. Now, emollients are either polar, or which means that they are compatible with water, or they're non-polar, which means that they're not compatible with water. They will separate if you put them in water. Now, there's a range, of course, of these things, but this is just how you look at them. Now, as far as emollients going in a conditioner, so there aren't any like water and oil or oil and water emollients. Really, you can use both. And typically what happens when you're making a conditioner, you have a oil phase and you put some emollients in the oil phase that are compatible with that. And you have a water phase and you might put some emollients that are compatible with water in the water phase. You bring them together, you create your emulsion. And so you have a formulation where the emollients are both water soluble and oil soluble. Now, I should say, if an ingredient is water soluble and you're putting it into a rinse out formula, the reality is that it's probably those water soluble ingredients just rinse down the drain. And so If you only have one to choose, the better ingredients for a hair conditioner that gets rinsed out is to put on an oil soluble emollient, because that's going to have a better chance of being left in your hair there. Okay, thanks for that question. Next question comes to us from Fondo. What hardening ingredients can be used to harden bathing soap? And what is the best kernel oil grade to use when making soap? The one that I have been using is giving me a very soft product. Uh, Soap bars are, admittedly, soap bars are not my exact specialty, but I'll give you some general advice. It's really going to depend on the exact type of soap bar that you're making. But you can use something like stearic acid or sodium stearate, and that's going to harden up a bathing soap. The best kernel oil grade, I mean, that depends on what characteristics that you want for the soap. When people ask me about what grade of product that they're talking about, I don't always exactly know what they mean. Are you saying food grade, pharmaceutical grade? What you do when you pick an ingredient for creating cosmetics, especially something like palm kernel, is you have a distribution of fatty acids, and the tighter you make that fatty acid distribution, the more consistent and regular your product is going to be. So fatty acids can range anywhere from 6 carbons long to, say, 22 carbons long. Palm kernel oil is mostly C16. It has a maximum in C16, but it has C12s and 14s and 18s, and it has that. And so the different grades are going to be how tight you are in the type of fatty acids that are in there. All right, I'm just going to look back here. We've got 75 questions more sent in from our viewers on our webinar. It's great to see. Let me just take a look at some of these questions and see how we're doing here, if those questions are coming in. I'm not sure. All right. Well, keep sending in your questions. Hopefully those questions are getting recorded and saved. I'm probably, the website's getting inundated right now, so there might be a problem there. Hopefully we're not crashing, but if the website does crash, just log out, come back in. I'm recording this and we'll see this, but hopefully it doesn't. Okay. If you do have a question, feel free to post it, but we're just working through our questions here. Okay, next question. This comes from Rupa. What are the key ingredients for a leave-in conditioner, your proportion and method for adding? So leave-in conditioners are primarily meant for detangling and adding shine and making the hair feel softer. Some of the key ingredients include humectants, so things like propylene glycol and glycerin are often used in leave-in conditioners. Then you also want to have silicones, so dimethicone, copolyol, cyclomethicone. These, when it's a leave-in conditioner, you don't need to use something like dimethicone directly. You can use water-soluble silicones because they're not getting rinsed away, and they're probably easier to use. And then you can use emollients in your leave-in conditioners. Coconut oil is a decent emollient to use, but you can use, cetyl palmitate and myristate and emollients like that. Essentially, you want to use emollients that give you the feel that you want. Raw material suppliers have a ton of different emollients, which they all kind of feel the same to me. But, you can use the one that gives you the effect that you want. Now, as far as how do you add these to the formulas, that depends on the rest of your formula. For water-based products, you mix things directly with water. For silicones, you can, add them if they're water-soluble. You can add them, or you can emulsify them. And if you've got an oil-soluble component, so you can use polysorbates to solubilize them, or you can create a full-on emulsion. So it really depends. If you have non-water soluble emollients, then you're going to need to use an emulsifier. Okay, next question from Quatanda. How and when are the courses, and where do they learn? Are they all free? And okay. So this is just asking about our course. You can take the Practical Cosmetic Formulation course. This takes you through the whole process of essentially what a cosmetic chemist does. And so the practical cosmetic formulation course, if it is your desire to get a job into the cosmetic industry, I don't think there's a better course for that or a better online course for that anyway, because it was created by people who, well, me, and I had some help too, but it was created by people who were in the cosmetic industry. I worked in the cosmetic industry for 17 years, and I was a formulator, and I'm still involved in Society of Cosmetic Chemists. So if it's your desire to get into the cosmetic industry with a job as a chemist, this is the one for you, because it goes through the cosmetic industry. It gives you perspective on raw materials. It gives you specific formulation advice, skincare, hair care, color care. We have a whole module on product testing. We have a whole module on scale up, and overall, there's 9 modules, and that kind of information. I'm actually working on an update, but it's as pretty updated as you can be for the general type of information there. But if you want to know, what is the job of formulating, check out our practical cosmetic formulation course. There should be a green button below where you can click on there to get our webinar special and learn how to register. But if you have questions about it, feel free to post them or send them to me. Okay, next question comes from Chris. How do I adjust hair shampoo, conditioner, and conditioning washes for beards? That's a good question. Since beards don't really require much foam, you could probably reduce the surfactant levels, I don't know, by say 10 to 20% of a shampoo. Uh, the same is true for beard conditioners. Conditioners typically are about 10% active, and the rest is water. For a beard, you could probably make a conditioner that's maybe 8%, 6% active. You just don't need as much material in making them. Um, Now, if this is something you really want to experiment with to figure it out exactly, there isn't any right or wrong answer. This is a kind of a newish area as far as products getting targeted. Now, you can optimize to figure out what level of the ingredients that you want to use, and that gets you the best results. In truth, you may not have to adjust the formulas at all. You could just take a standard shampoo formula, put the word beard shampoo on it, and sell it. That could probably work perfectly fine. In fact, I use a shampoo for my hair, but I use it as a body wash too. Shampoos can work like that. We launched a body wash when I was buying shampoos. We added some moisturizing ingredients, and we just called it a body wash. And so you could probably just take those formulas as they are, but you want to experiment with them and maybe cut down on the solids. And this is because you can help reduce the cost of your formula, and it also can reduce the chances of skin irritations. Okay, next question comes from Thando. Thando, which is the best emulsifying wax between cetosterol alcohol combined with SLS and polywax on its own? I can't really answer that. The answer depends on what oils are you trying to emulsify. When you're picking an emulsifier, you can't just say, hey, what's an emulsifier I can use? You have to say, first you have to say, what oils are you using? So it starts with the oil phase. What's the HLB of the oil phase that you're using? And then from that, then you pick your emulsifier. You don't say, just throw in any emulsifier. They are all different, and they work differently for different oils. So I can't answer a question with that without knowing what oils you're using. All right, as just a little break, we've got a ton of questions to go through. I'll get through as many as I can. Post your questions in, give your comments. After this is over, I will answer as many as I can afterwards, and I will definitely answer some. So feel free to do that. Hopefully everything's still working. No, it looks like we got a gateway timeout. So we again seems to have crashed our system. Yeah, hopefully that's getting set back up. But the stream is still working. So to see the live chat, I think you go to YouTube. What's the link for that? Oh, I don't know. So some people are watching this through YouTube, and they see the live chat. I'm recording this, so I'll be sure to send it out next time, and I'm gonna have to work with my IT guys to get this technology worked out. I wasn't having this problems before, but I guess we're having them now. So, okay, let me just keep on going through some of the questions here. All right, next question. I make my own hair products and I want to sell them one day, but I don't use preservatives. Yikes. At which point of making products do I add preservatives and how much? Well, Tammy, thanks for that question. And thank you so much for thinking about using preservatives when you're selling them. It is good that you're thinking about preservatives, and you shouldn't sell any product without ensuring that they're properly preserved. Typically, preservatives are added at the end of the production process. Although, if you are making a product that doesn't get heated and doesn't get cooled, then you can add them at the beginning. They're not going to break down. Now, the amount that you use is going to depend on the exact formula that you're making. It's also going to depend on what other ingredients are in your formula. Preservation isn't just a simple matter of just dropping some ingredients and then the product's preserved. It's a little more complicated than that. Picking the right preservative depends on many factors, and you have to choose one that works for you. And those factors are like cost, what other ingredients are in the formula, what your manufacturing conditions are, and what your product's going to be exposed to. So there are just a lot of things that you have to consider when going through and picking a preservative. You can't just dump it in there and say, hey, it's preserved. So that's it. All right, Tammy also asked, says, I make my own hair products and I like my products at a pH of 4.0, which works well for my hair. At what part of Formulator do I add citric acid, and for how much for an 8-ounce product? When you add it, typically for that is you can add it at the beginning of the process because it's going to be easier to dissolve. But if you are working with a liquid solution of acid, then you can add that at the end of the process. So typically what you do is you take citric acid, which is sold as typically you buy that as a crystalline powder, and then you can make a 1% solution. So you take water, you add 1 gram of citric acid, mix it up, let it dissolve, and now it's a 1% solution of citric acid. Then you can add that liquid acid at the end of your formulation process. Now, you don't have to do that. You can put the crystals in the beginning right into the water, but sometimes it's a little easier to do that. Now, if you're working with a liquid solution, you can add it at the end. And the realities for like a shampoo system, it doesn't really matter when you add the acid. It will matter for things like gels, and it's going to matter. It could matter for things where you have acids in there and bases, and when you mix it might matter. But for the most part, for something like shampoo, when you add it is just when it's convenient to add. Now, you can also adjust the pH with an acid solution. So if you make the product and the pH turns out too high at the end, then you add that solution and you bring that pH down. Now, but without knowing more about your formula and what you have in it, I can't tell you how much of your acid that you're going to add. Usually this is determined through a process of trial and error, and that can be affected by the quality of the ingredients that you're using. So to figure out the level, I would start with 0% acid, take the pH of it, then add increments of 0.1% acid, mix it together, take the pH, see where that pH is, and go through that process until you've got essentially a pH curve. That curve is going to be concentration of acid and pH, and it should look something like that. So more acid you get, the higher the pH goes. And then maybe it'll curve off like that. But that's the way that you figure out how much of the acid that you should use. Okay, let's see how we're doing here. Looks like everybody got kicked off the webinar. I must say, is a little bit frustrating for me. I'm sorry. But it looks like people are still online on the live chat, on the YouTube stream. So I think I'm going to have to, I'll have to do something to figure this out in the future. All right. If you are online, feel free to add your questions at the live chat. If you're watching this at a later date, I'm going to leave it open so you can post some questions there. I'll keep monitoring those things, and hopefully we can get this working. Perry's frustrated, but Perry's still going to be answering some questions. So let's go to our next question. Here's a question comes from Caesar. Caesar says, "What do you think green? Do you think the green cosmetics is a trend that's ever going to end, or is it going to be around forever?" All right, I think green cosmetics is going to be around for some time. Now, let me step back and explain what is meant by green cosmetics and why I think that it's going to stick around for a while. In the field of chemistry, scientists were traditionally concerned most about how do you make different raw materials. Everybody, in the 20th century, everybody was at like, what can we make? What molecules can I make? And everybody wants to make it. So they focused on synthesizing new things. And initially, scientists really didn't care, how that got done. It was more about achieving the thing, getting it done, and you didn't really think much about the process of how that got done. So they would use whatever catalysts or whatever starting raw materials they could to make new molecules. Now, once a useful molecule was discovered, then the focus would switch to how do you make that material as efficiently as possible. So it was, let's find the cheapest ingredients that we need that'll give us the best yield and best outcome for creating these things. And to some extent, that's still being done. This makes it easier to scale up, and it makes it easier to get larger quantities and gives you the lowest cost. Unfortunately, the processes that were always the most efficient, they weren't always the best for the environment, and they produced a lot of waste. And about 20 years ago, the concept of green chemistry was developed. There was a pamphlet put out by the American Chemical Society that gives you the 12 principles of green chemistry. But basically, the idea is that instead of just figuring out how to make stuff and how to make it on a big scale, now we want to focus on green chemistry and how to make that product, sure, efficiently and cost effective, but you want to make it more environmentally friendly. And this would mean that you would use less efficient processes, but it also means you use ingredients that aren't going to harm the environment. And so I think this mentality in creation of chemistry and new raw materials, this is going to be around for a long time because it relates to sustainability and effect on the planet. So that's going to be around. So now getting to the cosmetic industry. In the cosmetic industry, green cosmetics it's really just another way to say natural cosmetics. The term organic is also used to describe these types of cosmetics, but green, natural, organic, and that's kind of what we mean there. As far as it has been steadily growing over the last decade, people have really focused on it because that's one of the few areas in the cosmetic industry where they've seen growth. Now, the problem with natural and green cosmetics is that, the reality is the products don't often live up to the expectations that consumers have, and they just don't work as well. Standard formulators would have used green ingredients if they worked better. They didn't work better. So that's where we end up with the products that we end up. The problem also with green and natural cosmetics is these things are harder to make. They're harder to keep stable. And while many consumers say they want natural cosmetics, what they really buy are cosmetics products that work well. If you make a natural product that doesn't work as well as some standard product people were using, they would buy it once, but they're like, I'm going to go back to the product that was working for me. Now, natural or green cosmetics, like I said, they just generally don't work as well as regular cosmetics. And now recently the term clean has been applied to cosmetics. And this is an attempt to get the same kind of implied safety benefits of natural cosmetics, but also to be able to use synthetic ingredients. You see, that problem with natural products is that since the products don't work as well or they're harder to make, we still want to use synthetic ones, but we don't want to use synthetic ones because consumers are afraid of that. But you create this thing called clean cosmetics, and now you can use synthetics and natural, combine them, and you get the implied safety benefits. They're not more safe. These clean cosmetics are not more safe than standard cosmetics, but consumers kind of think they are. And then with big companies like Walmart, Procter & Gamble, L'Oreal, Unilever, they're all starting to market clean beauty products. I really think this is the version of green cosmetics or natural cosmetics that's going to be around for quite some time. The benefit of clean over green beauty is that now you can make products that actually work almost as well as standard beauty products, but they also have that competitive edge where they imply that they're somehow safer. Mind you, they're not safer, but consumers think they are. So that's how it is. So the bottom line is, I think green cosmetics or clean beauty is going to be around for some time. And as formulators, you have to learn to formulate with that in mind, because that's what consumers expect. As a formulator, it's our job to both make products that work, but also make products that consumers want to buy. And green chemistry or green cosmetics or clean cosmetics, these are things that people want to buy right now. We'll see if that sticks around. I think it will, though. All right, thanks for that question. Let's check in on how we're doing. We're getting a database error. Whole system has crashed, but I'm still here answering questions. Yeah, and there we go. We've got some people online. Um, Holly asks, "Hey Holly, how's it going?" Holly says, "What are some natural preservatives?" I think we have this question later on, but you're online now, so let's answer that question now. Natural preservatives. So the answer depends on what you consider natural. If you want to step back and say natural is only things that are taken from nature, I would say that there are no natural preservatives, because everything that you use that's marketed as a natural preservative is they don't go out and find plants and then squeeze it out of the plant and say, here's the product. They find things that are effective as preservatives out in nature, and then they come to the lab and they synthesize a molecule that's equivalent to that. I'll give you an example. People say that natural preservatives are organic acids. So benzoic acid, sorbic acid, salicylic acid, and all of these things can be found out in nature, found out in plants. They're out there. Now, the stuff that you buy from raw material suppliers that are natural organic acids, those were synthesized in a lab. They aren't taken from plants. They're synthesized. So are they still natural? People say they're natural. So if you consider that natural, organic acids are some natural preservatives. Now, they're harder to work with. They're less compatible with a lot of formulas. You got to keep the pHs under 5.0, but those are options. Benzyl alcohol is another option. Phenoxyethanol is another option. Now we're starting to get fewer and fewer options, but we have actually a whole presentation on preservatives. Maybe that'll be next month's webinar. That apparently won't work for everybody, but we're recording it. Hopefully we're recording it. And so those are, hopefully those are some preservatives. Now, which do I think are most effective? Phenoxyethanol is a pretty good, widely effective one. And if you're using a combination of glycols, caprylyl glycol, and organic acids, you can make a robust preservative system. The ones that are most effective, of course, are parabens and formaldehyde donors, but nobody considers those natural. Okay, let's go back to our questions. Sorry for the people that were online, got kicked off. Clearly, I haven't fixed my technology problems, but I will for next time, hopefully. Our next question comes to us from Diana. Speaking of preservatives, how do you choose the best preservative, and how do you decide what percent level to use it? So the preservative system that you use depends a lot on different factors, but most importantly, what ingredients are in your formula? What's the water activity level? What's the pH of your formula? The structure of your formula. Is it anhydrous? Is it an emulsion? Is it gel? That sort of thing. It can also depend on the cleanliness of your manufacturing facility. And it, unfortunately, can also depend on your marketing position. As I was just describing natural preservatives, if your concern for cosmetics is safety, you would use the best preservatives available. And the best preservatives are parabens and formaldehyde donors and those things. As far as they're best as far as being effective against microbes. they're not best if in terms of what's the best one to market, because people have been afraid of them. So consumer desires is something you have to consider when you're formulating. And also another thing to consider when picking a preservative is the cost considerations. How much is it going to add? So the exact percent level that you use, that's going to depend on a lot of factors too. But typically, you're going to start with the amount that is recommended by the manufacturer. So whenever you buy a raw material, manufacturers should always, or almost always, give you a recommended use level for any ingredient. Now, they're going to recommend a high level. That's just, raw material manufacturers want to sell raw materials, and that's what they do. But um, so it's always a good place to start, but just know that they're going to give you the recommended highest level. So you're going to start there, and then maybe you could cut back the amount that you use. But the percent you use, just see what the manufacturer recommends, and then you can adjust up or down based on your specific conditions. Diana also asks about why or when do you use disodium EDTA or tetrasodium EDTA? Chelating agents like EDTA are used for a variety of reasons. Most commonly, they are included to help boost the effectiveness of various preservatives. And while EDTA is not a preservative itself, it does have the ability to loosen up the cell membranes of microbes, and then that lets the preservative get into the cells, and then that kills them. So if you are using weaker preservatives, these natural ones I would say are weaker preservatives, using a chelating agent is vitally important. EDTA also is used in situations when the consumer might be using an end product and they have hard water. So if you have hair products, hard water can, combine with soaps or other materials, and then it can start to build up in your hair. When you use a chelating agent, that chelating agent can grab those metal molecules and pull them out. And so in a case like that, if the consumer has hard water, you might use EDTA. Another thing that you might use EDTA in, it can help to stabilize the color of a formulator, so it can help with product stability. It can also help the products clean and foam properly. So those are a few reasons you'd use EDTA. As far as disodium EDTA or tetrasodium EDTA, these are used. Which one you use depends on the pH of your system that you're using. Higher pH, I think the higher you want to, like tetrasodium EDTA. Lower pH, you'd use, say, disodium EDTA. Okay, Marty says, what is the best thickener for now? Marty, thickening glucosides formula, just hard. They can't thicken up with salts, and if you're not using a standard thickener, they're a little harder. Most people have had success thickening glucoside formulas using either xanthan gum or cellulosic thickeners like hydroxyethyl cellulose or hydroxypropyl cellulose. Whether those still fit in with your natural marketing position, they pretty much still will. Marty also asked, what is the best way to disperse cellulose thickeners like Methocel 400101? Okay, Methocel. I always had fun using Methocel. It was always a challenge, but I always liked it. So the best way to disperse cellulose thickeners is to fill your container with colder water. Cold water, you usually think hot water is better. No, for cellulose, using cold water is better. Like when I say cold, if you can get 20 degrees Celsius or a little lower, not ice water, but colder water, then it's going to work better. And then, so what you do is you fill your container with the cold water, you start mixing it rapidly, and then you slowly add that powder. Now, if you add it too quickly, you might get fish eyes, and then it's going to take a really long time to get those hydrated. A fish eye essentially is like a little glob of powder, and the outside layer, the powder, gets hydrated right away, and the middle of the powder remains a powder, and the water doesn't get there, and the water is kind of repelled because the outer molecules have already absorbed all the water. That's why you need to, the smaller the particles that you're sprinkling in, and the more mixing that you get, the better. Now, the key is using cold water, but also be sure that you're not drawing in too much air in that batch, because that can lead to bubbles getting trapped. When making a product with cellulose thickeners, it's always best to add it at the beginning of the manufacturing process. All right, just as a reminder, I am Perry Romanowski. We are on the Chemist Corner question and answer session. I apologize for the technical difficulties. I am recording this, so I'm going to send out a recordings for anybody who misses. Thank you. Thank you so much to everybody who joined and who sent in questions, who expressed interest, and people in my courses and people who participate in the forum. I love you. You make this worth doing. I was actually in California just 2 days ago. I did a talk in California, and there were a number of people who came up there and just expressed how helpful that they found the site. And so that really makes me feel good. That's the reason I do this. And I like the subject, and I just like helping everybody. So thank you for all of that. All right, let's see how we're doing on the YouTube streaming questions. We've got someone asked, how do you make a hairspray unwashable? I don't think you really want an unwashable hairspray. People want they want to be able to get the hairspray out of their hair. So, I mean, the way you would make it unwashable is that you don't neutralize your resin. And then the unneutralized resin isn't going to be water soluble. You spray it on your hair and then you can't get it out. But nobody wants a hairspray that you can't get out. So that's how you would do it. I don't think it's a good idea. Actually, they used to use what was there was a resin that was used. I will think of it momentarily. But it's not used anymore in hairsprays because people couldn't wash it out of their hair. Here's a question. What emulsifier could you use for an oil-free emulsion? Well, if you have an oil-free emulsion, you don't really need an emulsifier. An emulsifier is put into a formula specifically to emulsify oils. Now, if you want to make a product, call it oil-free emulsion, you can use water, put in whatever emulsifier that you want, glycerol stearate, acetyl alcohol. There's just a wide range of things you can use. I would need more of a product that you're talking about to see exactly that. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. Jessica out there says, how can we make an emulsion look more opaque, whiter, more shiny? Depends on your formula. Typically, if you add something like glycol monostearate, EGMS, that can help with giving that the more opaque look. Using a higher level of solids like cetyl alcohol, stearyl alcohol, that can also make your emulsion look more opaque. There are actually polymers that you can add. I think National Starch has a polymer. I'm not going to recall the exact thing, but it actually is a white polymer that you pour in there, and it can make it look more opaque. Typically, that people don't use that. You can just do that by increasing the solids, and that could do that. Another, to make it look shinier, you could include a silicone in there. The silicones will work their way to the surface and make it look a bit more shiny. So those are just some ideas. If you were doing that specific project, I would have more specific advice to give you, but that would be my general approach there. Citra says, make a WhatsApp group. I don't really know how to make a WhatsApp group. That will be something I can learn in the future, but I'm already following a bunch of things here. So this is what I got, but maybe in the future. All right, back to our sent in questions. Let's see what question we are on. We are on question 20, and I've got like 70. So I got 10 minutes. Look, if I don't answer your question on this live webinar, I could email it to you if I have your email address. But otherwise, you can send me an email with the questions. If you join my course, I answer questions really right away. For people who aren't in my course, I still answer questions. I participate in the forum. I answer whatever. But if you're a student in the course, which you can go to chemistcorner.com/formulating-cosmetics to join, get more information on the course, that would be one of the ways I go. Okay. Hildy says, when I use Z-Maze or titanium dioxide as an opacifier in shampoo, how can I make it stable without going down in the bottle by transport or temperature? I'm working on natural formulas, and shampoo separates with gums. Hildy, this is a complicated question for which I would need to know more about the formula than you to give you a good answer. For example, I don't know what kind of surfactants you're using and what your thickening systems are. But to prevent separation, as you're describing, you need an ingredient that has suspending properties. So there are two things. There are thickening. Thickening just make your solution thicker. Suspending is a process by which it holds particles in your formula together so they don't float up and down. And only things are thickeners, but they aren't suspending agents. Some things can be suspending agents, but not thickeners. And I was suspending two ingredients that have suspending properties. Of course, carbomer is the best suspending agent that there is. But if you're working natural formulations, you can't exactly use carbomer. Although some people do greenwashing and they use carbomer and they call it natural. So maybe you can. But if you want suspending properties, xanthan gum does, that has suspending properties. And so I'm going to steer you towards xanthan gum. Another option is to switch out your opacifier. So instead of using titanium dioxide, use glycol stearate or ethylene glycol monostearate or one of the organic pearlizing agents. Although I don't know what qualifies as natural for your standards, so it's difficult to say. But this is the basic thought process that I would go through whenever I'm trying to address a problem like you're describing. Okay, thanks for the question. Ricardo asks, who can help me to get FDA approval? Good question. In the United States, FDA approval is not required for cosmetic products. As a cosmetic marketer, you are required to ensure that your products are safe to use. So you have to do testing. That means you have to do testing and have the test data available to demonstrate that your products are safe. You can't go in your backyard, dig up some material, squeeze it out, put it into a formula and say, oh, it's safe. You would have to go out through and demonstrate safety. So doing patch testing, doing inhalation testing. It depends on how you're doing it, but you would have to do some stability testing, of course. If you go to a raw material supplier, they've already done the testing on the raw material, and so you don't have to do as much testing that. But so if you stick to ingredients that have been evaluated by the CIR, that's the Cosmetic Ingredient Review Board, or that your supplier has given you products safety testing on, then you might not have to do any extra safety testing. Although at the very least, you could do stability testing, microbial challenge testing, and probably irritation or patch testing. But once you've gathered all the data required to prove that your products are safe and that all the claims that you make about the products are true, you can't do false advertising. You have to be able to prove anything you say about your product is true. Then you're able to sell your products in the United States. You do not need to get FDA approval. Now, it's good to register your company with the FDA, which, that could lead you to getting audited. Just look at your facilities, make sure you're following good manufacturing procedures. However, that is not a requirement. The FDA has put together a useful webpage that explains much of this in detail, and I'm going to send you the link to that separately. But you can just go to the FDA Cosmetics, look up a guide for small manufacturers, and that gives you information about that. Bottom line is you don't need FDA approval to sell cosmetics in the United States. All right, David says, in formulating a daily applied skin and hair conditioner, I'm formulating one. My customer wants healthy, growing hair. General question, what component do you believe actually would be beneficial for growing healthy keratin? Vitamins may be beneficial, of course, but any specific micronutrients specifically for hair, and does zinc do anything? Thanks, David. The only ingredients that is proven to topically help hair grow is minoxidil. And to put that in your product, you would need to follow the hair growth monograph that is published by the FDA. And, minoxidil also only works for about half of the people that use it. Things like vitamins, they have no proven impact, or topically applied vitamins have zero proven impact on the hair growth or scalp health. These are just claims ingredients that people put in their formulas because consumers believe they might have a benefit. There's no science supporting their use. There are also no proven micronutrients that are good for hair. Claims like this, they're used to support marketing stories. So, they are believed by people because, it might be old information that, civilizations of the past used to grow hair, or their grandmothers or mothers found some benefit in it, or some wives' tales. But as far as scientific proofs goes, there just isn't a lot. Now, you see stories of people studying things, and they find in cell cultures this happened, or in mice studies this happened. But when the rubber hits the road and you look for ingredients which if you put on your hair and it's going to make your hair grow, the only thing that's been proven is minoxidil to topically work. Um, Other things, they have stories about them, and you can include them for marketing reasons, but don't expect that they actually are going to work. Now, as far as proof goes, things like zinc just have not been demonstrated to help. You can use it to build a story around it, and if your consumers believe it, that it's a product. But if you want to sincerely make products that make your hair grow, there isn't much that can do that. That's just reality. Now, people, of course, are looking for that. If you can discover something that makes your hair grow, of course, yeah, lots of people would buy that. You don't even have to market it. People will just buy it because it works. And that's how you know that there isn't really anything out there that really works that well, because people have to market these products because they don't really work. Arena says, what specific do I need to know about formulations before asking a manufacturer to make a new product with a key ingredient that I wish to have in it? So it's a good question to ask. If you want to use a manufacturer to make your product, which incidentally, if you're a cosmetic marketer, that's what I recommend you do. I don't recommend that if you want to start your own beauty brand, I do not recommend that you go out and learn how to make beauty products. Because how to make a beauty product is a different skill set than how to sell a beauty product. If you want to have a successful brand, focus on learning how to market and sell your products, and let somebody else make the products for you. So, and the way you do that is you find a contract manufacturer. But before you go to a contract manufacturer, you'll want to know a few things. First, you'll want to know what type of products that you want to make. Of course, this is just obvious. Then you'll want to have some benchmark products. So you go to the contract manufacturer, say, I want a product like whatever you're making. I want a product like Pantene, or I want a product like Olay, or I want a product like SkinCeuticals, or like the Benefit products, that kind of, or the Ordinary products. Get some sort of benchmark. You say, I want a product like this. Now, you want to find a product that's already sold on the market, and you can then look at what are the ingredients that they use. If there are any kind of key ingredients that you want to call out in your marketing, then you have to tell the manufacturer that that's what you want. Now, they might suggest ingredients for you, but it is really more dependent on your specific marketing story of what ingredients you want to incorporate into the formula. The reality is that the ingredients that actually work, that actually have the benefits, the primary benefits for cosmetics, are not ingredients that people want to talk about. That nobody wants to talk about mineral oil or petrolatum. It's yawn. Nobody wants to talk about the benefits of glycerin or the benefits of sodium lauryl sulfate. People want to talk about feature ingredients, and whether those things work or not, or whether they have much impact on your formula or not, is debatable. But those are the things that marketers want to talk about. So when you're trying to come up with a new product and a key ingredient, you want to figure out what's the marketing angle that you want to use, and what is an ingredient that impresses your consumer. Now, a manufacturer, they might suggest ingredients for you, but what you use should depend on your own specific marketing story. You should tell them what you want. The other thing is you want to know is how much money are you willing to pay for the formula? That is, you want to give them a cost constraint to their formulations so that they stay within your budget. For example, if you're making a hair product that you want to sell for $5, the cost of the formula probably shouldn't be more than $1 per pound. You should also know that manufacturers will steer you towards ingredients that they use in-house, and that's fine. That will help keep the cost lower for you and for them. But you should also have a good sense of the fragrance that you want to use, because that's going to help to sort of set your product apart. And this can be done. Picking which formula, which fragrance that you use, it really is one of the most important aspects of your product, because people really buy products that they think smell good. All right, well, we're coming up on the top of the hour, and I'm through 25 questions. Wow. Okay, let's just take a look at the live streaming. See what we got here. Julie, you just happen to be at eye level there. So Julie says, can you please explain the difference between oil and water and oil? Okay, so oil in water, these are both types of emulsions. Oil in water, so there's a water phase and an oil phase. When you do an oil in water emulsion, that means, let me step back. You have a water phase and an oil phase. When you mix them together, the oil and water, normally they will separate because oil and water are not compatible. But when you have an emulsion, what will happen is, depending on the structure of it, the oils will be broken into tiny little particles, and those tiny particles will be dispersed throughout the water phase. When the tiny part and those particles are kept tiny and separated by the emulsifier. So you have the little tiny particle of oil, you have the emulsifier on the outside, and then that's distributed through the water phase. So in a situation like that, the tiny particles that are in the emulsion, that would be an oil in water. Yeah, so the oil is the tiny particles, and it's in water. So an oil in water emulsion would be that. The opposite is you have the water phase and the oil phase. When the tiny particles that distributed is the water. So the water is inside, the emulsifier is on the outside of the particle and dispersed in the outer layer is the oil. And in a case like that, that is a water in oil emulsion. So oil is in the water, oil and water. Water in the oil is the water and oil. So what does this all mean? Well, it typically depends on the type of formula. Most skin moisturizers, for example, are of the oil in water type. And there's some benefits to that. They're less greasy when you put them on. There's a cooling sensation that you get when it's put on. And they're less expensive. If most of your ingredients are water, it's less expensive. The water and oil versions, generally those will feel more greasy, but they also are more effective because there's more oil there, which can be more occlusive agents and that kind of thing. The other thing is you can use a lower level of preservative in there because it's just harder for microbes to get to water, and microbes need water to grow. And so that's another aspect of that. But like I said, that's the difference between oil and water, water and oil. And those are a couple of reasons why you use one or the other. Okay, well, it's top of the hour. I'll keep answering questions maybe for another half hour. Then I'll have to cut this off because I'm standing. I've been standing for, an hour and a half, 2 hours now, but I don't mind standing. And we have a ton of questions. Now, if I don't get to your question, send it in. Just keep the chat going. If you're watching this webinar at a later point, you can post a question below here, and I will get to it when I get a chance. Just be sure to include your email address. Again, I apologize to everybody who was not able to see this. There was obviously a website crash here, and well, I've got to work out some technology problems. Okay, next question, Eugene. What emulsifier should I use when making a gel with a high concentration of essential oils? Thank you. That, like I said a lot, that depends on the nature of the oils that you're using. I can't stress this enough. There's no such thing as just dump in an emulsifier and that solved the problem. No, it's complicated, a little complicated. The emulsifier that you use depends on the oil that you are using. Now, and when you say I have a high concentration of essential oils, I don't know what you mean by a high concentration. Also, you don't want to use too high a concentration of essential oils because for many people, essential oils are not good to put on your skin. They can cause allergic reactions, but you may be able to use a solubilizer like polysorbate 20. It's all going to depend on what your gelling agent is and the other ingredients in your formula. I guess it also depends on what the purpose of the gel is. If is this a skin product, a hair styling product? Maybe it's an air freshener. I don't know. As with many of these formulation questions, more information is typically required. But I give give it the best that I can. And hopefully you can get some general knowledge out of some of these specific questions. Okay. Rashi says, I usually make small batches, but my business is now growing. Scaling up becomes a challenge, specifically with stability issues. I formulate in percentages, so technically everything is correct, but stability has become an issue, specifically with emulsified hair butter. Sorry, I'm not really sure what the question is here, Rashi, but if you're asking about scaling of a formula, which you said, and this gives me a chance to talk about that, there are a number of challenges that can come up with scaling. So something that you make in your lab on this tiny level, when you try to make hundreds of gallons of it, yeah, you might run into problems. So um, the most important thing that you can do when you're scaling up is you want to have proper mixing equipment. Uh, Remember, if you're mixing something, say you take one of those handheld mixers and you mix it in, a small container in your kitchen, you're getting some shearing levels that you just can't get on or normally get on a large scale of version. So that's something to think about, measuring that. That's why it's best to use a center stir mixer where you can control the amount that's in there. And that sort of mimics what's going to happen on larger scales. If you're making emulsions, you're going to want a homogenizer, and then you're going to need a large container for manufacturing. You're going to also you might also have to change the order of addition. Scaling up is not just a simple matter of adding more ingredients, but you have to test the mixing conditions, the heating and cooling conditions. It can take a while, and it's not always a simple project. That's why we have people hire process engineers to get that to work. It's just it takes a lot of testing. Now, just because something can be made simply in the lab, that doesn't mean it can always be made simply on a larger scale container. I should say also, if you make a larger scale batch and it seems to have worked perfectly fine, you still should run stability testing on that to ensure that the product remains stable. Those different manufacturing procedures can actually lead to instability. Rosemary says, what is the best stabilizer in a cream formulation? This depends on what's in your cream formulation, as often is the answer, but probably the best stabilizer is some sort of acrylic acid like carbomer, acrylic acid polymer like carbomer. This ingredient is able to help thicken your system, but more importantly, it also keeps the emulsion particles suspended, which is going to help to ensure a longer emulsion stability. Now, I guess it also depends on what you mean by the word stabilize. People say, what's the best stabilizer? Like, stabilize what? Some people might consider a preservative a stabilizer. It stabilizes your product from being contaminated. Or maybe an antioxidant is a stabilizer, which stabilizes your color. I'm assuming you mean emulsion stabilizer that prevents a product from separating, but that's just my guess. William says, where can I purchase inexpensive HEC for a gel formulation? You can find suppliers of HEC, which is hydroxyethyl cellulose, at the website Knowde, knowde.com, or go to ulprospector.com. Both of these are options where they're meta options where they look at a wide variety of different suppliers of these ingredients. Now, I'm going to post the links of those ingredients that I just said. Those websites that I just said in the chat there. So, okay, let's see. Okay, Laura. Let's see what Laura said here. Laura says, hello, I wanted to ask, what is your opinion on where should one start if one wants to open up a company that offers formulation for cosmetic products? What knowledge does one need? What paperwork? That sort of thing. Good question. I get a lot of people who contact me and say, hey, I have this idea for a product and could you formulate it for me? At the moment, I don't have a lab setup. I do kind of have a lab setup. I'm not taking on jobs like this. And so I always pass them off to formulators. But the reality is that there are more people asking for formulators than there are people formulating products. So how do you become a formulation consultant? Step one, learn how to formulate. Now, it's helpful if you have a science background. If you get a degree from in chemistry, chemical engineering, getting a degree, even biology or some sort of science, that's good. And then it's also helpful if you have some experience working in the cosmetic industry. You could work at a contract manufacturer, work at a finished goods company, work at a raw material company. And I start out with that because when you're working, offering a service as a formulator, the first thing that someone is going to want to know is like, why should I hire you? What's your experience? And having that background on your resume, being part of the Society of Cosmetic Chemists, that sort of gives you more legitimacy as a formulator. Now, that is not to say that if you don't have a science degree, that you can't become a formulator. Now, there's a lot of people out there offering formulation services who just learned empirically how to do it. They learned by doing it. And a lot of times those formulators are better to use because they actually have made a lot of these. A lot of people, just because you get a degree in chemistry doesn't mean you know how to make a shampoo, and it doesn't mean you know how to make emulsions. In fact, university degrees don't teach you much of anything about making these products. You learn all of these things on the job, but getting that job takes getting a degree, and so that's why it's good to have that. Now, as far as starting your own formulation company, so the first step is to learn how to formulate. Get some background credentials. Now, if you want to take a course, an online course like my course teaches you all that you need to know about formulating, the process of going through and formulating cosmetics. It will be helpful if you're trying to get a job in the cosmetic industry, and just because it introduces you to the way that the people in the industry talk, and the things that are of concern to cosmetic formulators. Going through our course, it's going to expose you to all the formulations, the ingredients, and how to do them. But you can't go through the course and say, okay, now I'm a formulator. You have to actually sit down and make formulations. You have to sit down and experiment. And so when you're first starting out, you must open up a formulation service. Make a lot of formulas, learn how to make a lot of formulas, and learn what kind of products that you can specialize in. A lot of people, they say, oh, I'm a cosmetic chemist. Maybe you learn how to make hair products. Maybe you learn how to make skin products. Maybe you learn emulsions and gels. Color cosmetics is a lot different than making a shampoo. Just because you say you're a cosmetic chemist doesn't mean you can necessarily make lipsticks if you spent your entire career making skin lotions. And so if you want to offer formulation services, you got to learn to be a complete cosmetic chemist, learn how to make color cosmetics, learn how to make skincare, learn how to make hair care. And the only way you learn how to do those things, you can read a lot, you can take online courses, but you have to actually go through and make these things before you can start offering services to people. Now, once you have the background, once you learn how to formulate, and you want to start opening up, offering your services for formulation, you've got to establish yourself as an expert. So go to a place like our forum. People ask questions in the forum. You can go through there and you can answer the questions in that forum. Now, a lot of that work is done for free, but once you establish yourself in a community like our forum, that you know what you're talking about, then people will be more inclined to inquire with you, to hire you. Just because people say, that they are a cosmetic chemist doesn't mean they actually know anything about formulating. I see so many of these online courses where they promise that you go through this course and you can get a diploma in organic formulating or a diploma in preservation or something. Those things, they aren't really worth much of anything. You can put it on your resume and maybe some consumer might be impressed by that. But your own, those things don't really mean that much, as they especially wouldn't mean it much to if you were being hired, tried to get a job in the cosmetic industry. Nobody is going to be impressed with your online course or diploma that you received, because those things don't really mean anything. What means something is like a diploma from the University of Cincinnati. They have a university program, or the University of Toledo has a program. Those things would mean something. Some online program that someone put together that doesn't mean much, but those projects or online programs are helpful in learning information, because especially information is not taught in college. So you can learn that. But don't think that you get a diploma, an online diploma, and then you put that on your resume and that's going to impress people to want to hire your formulation services. But essentially, you've got to establish yourself as an expert formulator. Then I would say you need an online presence. You're going to have a website. I would start with Twitter, developing some sort of online presence there, so people you develop an audience, and then that audience will know to ask you for advice and maybe take some of your courses. I see people though who have 3-4 years of experience, and then they start a course. Maybe it's a good course, maybe not. I haven't gone through these things, but you can't learn a lot of formulating with just a couple of years. There's just so much to learn, and you need a lot of experience. Those are just some of my thoughts on that. You don't need any specific, at least in the United States, you don't need any specific certification or paperwork. I would say you want to create a resume, an online presence that people can find, that people will be impressed by, and that's how you'll start getting jobs. All right, back to some of our questions. Let's see. Here's one from Kasun. Can you explain to me how to find the right answers about cosmetic formulating by searching Google? Very difficult for me to believe about internet because there are a lot of liars on the internet. Ah, boy. Well, there is. It is really a challenge. I mean, the great thing about the internet is that anybody can publish anything about anything they want on the internet. And the terrible thing is anybody can publish anything that they want on the internet. But now is the greatest time to be alive, because you can learn pretty much anything that you can learn going on the internet, but it's so much easier to lie to you and spread misinformation. So it's a real challenge to find good information on the internet, especially information about formulating. Now, some sources that are pretty good, of course, Chemist Corner, but of course I'm biased. I would say look at our forum. In our forum, and I don't really edit the forum that much. I make sure people behave well and they don't insult other people. But the information, and I make sure that there's information that's accurate. So if somebody's posting something that I don't think is accurate, I'm going to call them out and say that, as will the other formulators in the forum. So there are formulators from around the world, but those are people that actually put products together that are on the market. So that's a good place to go there. Go through our blog, go to our courses. But I would also say you can find good information at our free course, learncosmetics.com. Now, say sources that I'm not involved with, let's say. UL Prospector has some good information about about formulating. So ulprospector.com, they have some great general knowledge there. The magazine published by Red, Cosmetics and Toiletries, great information about formulating that you can find there. Those are the sources that cosmetic chemists go to find information. Happy.com, HAPPI.com. They have some good, reliable information there. Now, I've also met Belinda Carley. She runs the Personal Care Science Institute. She puts out some good information, very helpful information. Check her YouTube channel out. You can find good information from her. And you can also find good information on a more crafty side, is the swiftcraftmonkey.com. Jane Barber, not Jane Barber, I'm sorry, Susan. I'll think of her name in a moment, but Susan puts out a lot of good information there. Now, she doesn't have a science degree, and actually, I don't think Belinda has a science degree either. But both of them have empirical knowledge where they've gone through, spent many hours, a lot of time putting together formulas and just iterating their way. So they have a lot of experience. And one of the problems with when you don't have a science degree and you learn things just by doing and empirically, uh, the information you have can be heavily influenced by the marketing that's put out by raw material manufacturers, and that information isn't always correct. But having empirical knowledge developed over many years of trial and error is really helpful. And so, like I said, there's some good information there. But I will give you an example. I see a lot of people online, and both of the other sources that I mentioned, they do this. They use panthenol, and panthenol has almost no impact on your formula. If you left it in or put it out, the consumer's not going to notice. But I always see them adding ingredients like that, which, for my taste, it's if you were just trying to create the most efficient, best product, maybe you wouldn't include ingredients like that. But that's quibbling with little details. Still, some great information there. Indeed, there are a lot of people on the internet who publish misinformation, or they're going to promise to give you diplomas in formulating. Like I said, as I said before, diplomas, they don't really mean anything. They might make you feel better, but don't go around putting this diploma out there and say, "Oh, now I'm a formulator." These people won't, especially cosmetic industry people, they don't really take that seriously. They don't recognize online diplomas. If you get a diploma from the University of Cincinnati, Fairleigh Dickinson, and some of the university organized places, that means a lot more. In the reality, if you try to get a job at like L'Oreal, for example, or they really only want to hire chemical engineers. So you got to go get a degree in chemical engineering, and then they'll hire you. They don't even, usually hire people with just chemistry degrees. But that's the real. But you can find lots of people who will. You do need a science background. All right. Hopefully that was helpful. We're coming up in an hour and a half. I'm going to go I got a lot more questions, but I'll go until the half hour, so 11:30. So about 10 more minutes here of questions. Let's see, people online. What do we have here? M. Hindi says, what about your products? I'm not sure what you're asking there, but I have a shampoo and conditioner product that I make, but I don't make it. I created it, and I launched the product as a demonstration of how to launch a product. But I try not to be in the business of selling products. I just in the business of teaching people how to make products, and you can get information on my course by going to going to the link that I just put in the chat there, chemistcorner.com/formulating-cosmetics. Let's see, lots of questions there. We'll go. Okay, next question here comes from Athena. Hi, I actually have a question within a question. I have been desperately trying to find a way to decrease the drag and increase the spreadability in my lotion. I thought of adding carbomer or HEC would help, but it didn't really help. Are there ingredients you could suggest to give me smooth, glidey on the lotion? Thanks, you're a gem. Oh, thank you, Athena. Well, without knowing the ingredients in your formula specifically, if it's hard to give you a specific answer, I can say that no, carbomer and HEC will not help with glide. Those are thickening agents. Typically, they're not going to have much impact there, especially carbomer. HEC might make it feel a little slimy, so that could help with glide, but that's not really what you want to do. To improve glide in a formula, the best ingredients are to use silicones like dimethicone, cyclomethicone, or some sort of lighter silicone derivative. And another thing you do is try to cut down on your butters that you might be using, but those are just a couple of suggestions. Sachi says, my question is, for making a natural lotion, what preservative is suggested by you? And also, do we need anything other than a preservative? Well, the preservative you use depends on the ingredients in your lotion. Many people who formulate natural use phenoxyethanol, and that can work, but you might also use benzyl alcohol in addition to caprylyl glycol and using some sort of chelating agent. You can also reduce the pH to try to keep it below 5, which can help inhibit bacterial growth. Those are just a few suggestions with the questions you asked, that's the best I could do. Okay. Next question comes to us from Imad. How do I measure the SPF value of a sunscreen cream? Well, this is a test that you have to send to an independent testing lab house to do. Essentially, they get human volunteers, they expose them to UV radiation in a small patch at different levels and intensities, and then they apply the formula to a specified area and with a set amount. I think 2 grams per centimeter square of skin. And then they expose that amount to different UV intensities. This simulates time exposure of the sun. And then they can determine how long in the sun is equivalent to the UV exposure, and they can determine SPF value for that. So, for example, if skin burns in the equivalent of 5 minutes out in the sun, UV exposure without treatment, and then it takes 150 minutes with the treatment to burn, that would give you an SPF value of 30. So 5 times 30 equals 150. Now, to do this takes specialized equipment, and it's not something that you could do at home, for example. You can also get a rough estimate of the SPF by using the Sunscreen Simulator, which is produced by BASF. I'm going to, I'll put a link in the chat for anybody interested in the Sunscreen Simulator. There you go. Okay. Keep plugging through questions here. There's a question from Tina. Well, it's not really a question. Tina says, I don't know where to start with my formulation. So it's not really a question, but let me give you some formulating advice. First place to start is to figure out what kind of product you make. Then you go out and you find a benchmark example on the market. No one wants a completely new product type, so it's best you start with something that already exists. This gives you a guide. Now, it would be good to write down exactly what the functional ingredients are. So get the ingredient list. All right. So take a look at the ingredient list. Write down what you think the functionality of all those ingredients are. Why were those ingredients added? Now, if you don't know what the functionality is, you can look it up or you can ask questions in the forum. Now, once you figure out what the key ingredients are to making it work, then you can start putting together a starting formula. Now, often this is going to be a guess, but you can find starting formulas from suppliers. Happy.com has a formulary, and we also have the compilation of free formulations. Then the next step is get your raw materials, make some prototypes, evaluate it, decide what needs to be improved, rework your prototypes, then just repeat that process, and you keep doing that until you get a formula that you like. Formulation is easy. Well, it takes a lot of time, but it can be fun and easy. And so, while you didn't have a question, Tina, that's my formulation advice to you. All right. Marianne says, what chemical, whether organic or not, is prohibitive to cancer patients to use in formulating personal care and beauty products? Sorry, Marianne. I do not know the answer to that question. And in fact, that question would be best to ask a doctor, and more specifically, to ask someone who specializes in cancer. Don't ask cosmetic chemists. We don't really know. We're not instructed on making products specifically for people with cancer. I will say that there are many different types of cancer, and there are many different types of treatments. And so there's not going to be one single answer that says, if you have cancer, stay away from this. It just, things don't work like that. But again, what you avoid is going to depend on what treatment you're going through. Nancy says, I would like to know if adding something like Collageneer in order for it to work on my face cream. Everything that I've read says that it supports collagen synthesis. All right. Let me just start with this. There is no good evidence that you can add something to your face cream that's going to increase collagen synthesis. In fact, it would be illegal for a cosmetic to actually do that, according to the FDA. If a compound increased the collagen synthesis of your body, that would make it a drug, and that would make it illegal. So I looked at Collageneer. It's something I think you can buy from makingcosmetics.com. And the description of that is just terrible. It says it's made of sunflower seed oil and lupinus albus seed oil, and they claim that it stimulates collagen synthesis. It They shouldn't say that. They shouldn't market it like that. You couldn't market it a cosmetic if you said it did that. That would be illegal if it did that. And the evidence that they present are cell cultures. And so essentially what you do is you have a dish of human cell cultures, they're living, and then you squirt your ingredient in it, and then you take some measurements of something to determine synthesis. Now, that's perfectly fine. The data is not terribly compelling to me, but let's just say, okay, that works. That does not mean if you take it and you put it on your skin, it's going to get down to where your cells are growing, and then that's going to make that work. Now, it doesn't work like that. The skin is a barrier, and the skin prevents things from getting deeper into your dermis. And so the chances that collageneer is going to stimulate your collagen synthesis are little to none. And if it did work, it would be illegal. So that's my thoughts on that. Let's see. Athena says, "Oh, I apologize. I forgot to include my second question about HEC and carbomer. What's the proper way to add them? When do you add them? Do you divide the water, etc.?" Okay. You add carbomer and HEC in the beginning of your formulation process. Often it's the first ingredient that you add to the water phase. I described HEC earlier in this talk and how you can do that. You can actually make a solution of carbomer or HEC and then add the appropriate amount to the formula separately. We actually, when I was working at the shampoo company, we actually had a carbomer tank in which we made it was a 1 or a 2% carbomer solution. That was then incorporated into the formula as needed. Now, the thing about that is just be sure you wait till the end to neutralize it, because if you neutralize carbomer too soon, it'll thicken up, and then you'll get bubbles throughout and it won't mix right. So there you go. Well, we're coming up on 90 minutes of this, and so let's see what we have in the says first time joining your personal email contact for news. You can contact me through my website, chemistcorner.com. We have a contact us information there. You can go there, go through the forum, just look up Perry Romanowski on Google, and you can find my contact information there. Actually, Perry Romanowski at gmail.com, I'll get that too. So there you go. Okay, let's see who gets the last question. I'm sorry, I'm looking through some of your old chats here. Aziz, may I add citramonium chloride with PQ7 and dimethicone, and if yes, what percentage? Well, if you're making a shampoo, no, you can't add citramonium chloride to a shampoo. You can use PQ7, you can use dimethicone. PQ7 is used in the shampoo at about 0.5%. Dimethicone is used in the shampoo up to 1%. Citramonium chloride does not work in a shampoo. In a conditioner, yes, you can use citramonium chloride, and you can use PQ7 and dimethicone. Yes, you can use all three of those in a conditioner, not in a shampoo. Another question here. Are you a manufacturer of cosmetics? No, I do not manufacture cosmetics. I'm a formulator. I know how to create the formulas, but I do not have manufacturing equipment that you could find contract manufacturers if you're looking to make formulas. Hand wash formula based on CHG, which is non-ionic surfactant. Can you suggest to give good foam performance? That's not enough information for me to answer. I don't know what CHG is. Is it glucoside? Basically, if you want to improve foam performance, you have to increase the level of the surfactant, or you can decrease any kind of oils that you might have in the formula. So but that's as general as I can give you. What's the difference between polysorbate 20 and polysorbate 80? Well, they just have different solubility characteristics. The number means the level of ethoxylation. And so the reason that they do a 20 version and an 80 version is because 20 will be compatible with oils that have a certain HLB, and 80 will be compatible with oils with a different range of HLB. I can't remember the higher or lower, but that's generally the difference between those two things. Aziz says, I can't see the live chat questions. Yeah, sorry, I was having some technical difficulties. Looks like it crashed. I'll try to work that out for next time. Urban said, I'm making shower gel shampoo using liquid soap recipe. What water-soluble ingredients can I use to make the product more moisturizing? A lot of people use glycerin hyaluronic acid is another humectant you can use. You can use polyquaternium 7, polyquaternium 10. Those things will help with making it more moisturizing. Adding oils just kind of dampens the effectiveness of your shower gel, so I wouldn't recommend that. But I would look for water-soluble emollients and humectants, but that should give you a good starting area there. Answered Jessica's. We talked about natural preservatives. Already answered that. Okay. All right, we'll go to two last questions. Two last questions here. Let's see. All right, here, two last questions. Let's see if I go on here. Okay. Challenge. Here's a question from Nikki. How can I encapsulate vitamin C and E? Is it correct that they can be liposomal encapsulations by only sunflower lecithin with a glass stir and ultrasound? Encapsulation is a complicated process that I don't believe can be done with a glass stir and an ultrasound. This really isn't my area of expertise, so I can't really give you a definitive answer, so I'm sorry about that. But my suggestion is you find a raw material supplier who does encapsulation work like BASF or Ecopol Tech, and you can seek them out. Another thing you can try is to mix them in with cyclodextrins. Cyclodextrins can help to encapsulate ingredients like that if you want to do it on your own. But really, encapsulation is something that should be left to raw material suppliers. Okay, Katie gets the last question. Two questions. One, is there any sunscreen ingredient that I recommend? I really don't know what you're asking there. But if you're making a sunscreen, you should follow the FDA sunscreen monograph and use sunscreen ingredients that are approved by the FDA. Zinc oxide is a useful one because it covers broad spectrum UVB, UVA. Avobenzone is an ingredient that covers UVA, which is useful. Octocrylene, another ingredient that is helpful. I mean, I guess I don't know exactly what you're looking for there, but those are the sunscreen ingredients that you should be using. And then the second question, is honey a natural preservative as claimed by Boomby Cindy Joseph? No, honey is not a natural preservative. You should not use honey as a preservative because it's not a preservative. Now, what honey is a solution of polysaccharides, and it has a low water activity. So by itself, honey is naturally preserved. Honey doesn't really require a preservative because there's no water in it. But you can't take honey and put it in your water-based formula and expect that it's going to be a preservative. Honey is not a preservative itself. It's just the conditions of honey and the fact that there's no water in it is what makes it self-preserved. So saying honey is a preservative, that's just wrong. Okay. What also is wrong is my technology. I really have to fix that here. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining this webinar. I'm going to have a replay on it so we can get that worked out. Thank you, everybody who was on the live chat. That's a whole new thing there. And if I didn't get to your chat, I apologize. I will stick on a little bit more and answer some of those questions, but I'm going to end the stream here. I'm Perry Romanowski. This has been the Chemist Corner question and answer formulation session. I hope you found it useful. I'll do these. There were a lot more questions that I didn't get to. I apologize. If you sent in a question, you gave me your email, I will endeavor to send that to you and get your question answered. And the next time, let me tell you what did happen in this one. People who sent in questions early, those are the questions that I went through first. So the sooner that you put your question in, the more likely you are to get the question answered. And hopefully you found this helpful. If you'd like to be part of our formulation course, chemistcorner.com/formulating-cosmetics. Go there, and you can join the course. I'm working on a new course coming up. It's going to be launched in October if I can do it. It's more than halfway completed, but it's going to be about cosmetic raw materials. So look forward to that new course. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Thanks again. I'm Perry Romanowski, and I look forward to seeing you in the next webinar.